What's going on, FortWorth family? It's FortWorthFabian, BigBossFabo, back with a video for you guys, man. Today I'm back with a documentary. I'm doing a reaction to VH1 Legends documentary for Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. So, it's a documentary from the year 2000. So I've been doing a few of these VH1 reactions, man, behind the music, but this one is, I guess, more so specific to VH1 Legends documentary. I'm not sure what the difference is between the two styles, but be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, FortWorthFabian, man. It's the road to 1 million. Peace, love, prosperity, everybody rocking with the channel. With that being said, man, just check out my playlist pages. This is the first time getting familiar with the channel. See all the forms of content and reactions I do on the channel. Yeah, man, and if you have additional recommendations, put them down in the comment section down below. So yeah, I'm gonna do more of these documentaries. So if you have specific documentary reactions, you know, preferably behind the music, they got a lot of these on YouTube. So you know, I'm gonna obviously be reacting to most of these. So hey, let me know y'all's thoughts and feedback in the comment section down below. So Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. It's a hell of a name right there, man. So basically, a folk rock supergroup made up of American singer-songwriters David Crosby, Stephen Stills, and English singer-songwriter Graham Nash. When joined by Canadian singer-songwriter Neil Young as a fourth member, they are called Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Okay, so we got Neil Young in the mix. I've done a few Neil Young reactions, so good to see that he's a part of the group. You know, a familiar name, so to speak. So yeah, man, let's get into this reaction without further ado.
They began the 70s as the top band in the US and then abruptly broke apart. For 30 years they lived high and low, from adoring stadiums to jail cells, from wealth and luxury to near-death experiences. But when times were dark, the friendship between these four complicated men shone brightest, until they surprised the whole world by reuniting to tour in the year 2000, 3 decades after they walked away. David Crosby, Stephen Stills, Graham Nash, and Neil Young are legends. This is their story.
Carry on, love coming to us all.
The first time I saw Neil, I was going across Canada on this. The first time I saw Neil, I was going across Canada on this tour with this little folk group, and he was doing exactly what I wanted to do when I got back, was to get a great rhythm section and play folk songs on an electric guitar.
Every time you touch her.
We drove down to Los Angeles in a '53 Pontiac hearse, and we're in traffic,
Neil.
and I guess Stills saw us, so he ran up to us and got us, and we pulled over.
Neil Young teamed up with Stephen Stills in 1966 to form one of the greatest California rock bands, Buffalo Springfield.
There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear.
The Springfield found immediate success, but conflicts between the two stars, Stills and Young, combined with Young's desire for a solo career, caused tension from the start. Stills said later that he wanted to be in the Beatles, and Neil wanted to be Bob Dylan.
Interesting. So these guys started off together. So, you know, obviously the story will probably tell, you know, how it came about to where they got back, you know, in a cahoots with each other. But what was the name of that band? The greatest band of that time? I don't even remember what he said, man.
Buffalo Springfield.
Buffalo Springfield. There's a ring to the name, but let me know what's the biggest hit Buffalo Springfield released, man. Let me know in the comment section down below.
Combined with Young's desire for a solo career, caused tension from the start. Stills said later that he wanted to be in the Beatles, and Neil wanted to be Bob Dylan.
The relationship was a bunch of 19 and 20-year-old guys just getting something together for the first time in the spotlight of, you know, interviews and you know, attention that they never had before.
We lost the ability to stay in the moment, you know, which is what you have to do to perform.
Young walked out on the group just before the 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. Stephen asked David Crosby of the Byrds to fill in.
Neil had split, and Stephen, you know, and I knew each other and liked each other. And he said, "Well, you want to, like, we got to do this gig. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. You got to do this." And I said, "Yeah, I'll sing with you."
Stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. Stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Crosby was also
Stop. Who remade that? It ain't the first time I heard that. Who remade that? I feel like somebody knocked it off. Took it from Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. But, I mean, that didn't even... Look at me, just... the tomfoolery.
performing at the festival with the
All
Byrds,
over the
who were
place
at
with it.
the height of their success.
Between Sundance Village, the midnight's broken soul.
Crosby was having troubles with his bandmates Chris Hillman and Roger McGuinn. Troubles that were magnified by his performing with Buffalo Springfield.
I remember it being a very kind of sour experience. It was sad on stage. There was the camaraderie that we'd had as a band wasn't there anymore. It was David Crosby's wanting to be in what became Crosby, Stills, and Nash that really drove the situation to an end.
There was some friction there, you know, and also I've never been, you know, the easiest person in the world. I'm very opinionated and very independent guy.
8 miles high, and when you touch down.
They said, you know, we'd rather do it without you. I said, well, you're making a terrific mistake, you know. They said, well, we think we'll do better without you.
When Buffalo Springfield split for good, Crosby and Stills decided to team up.
We sort of found ourselves spending a lot of time together and driving around and you know, and singing songs. And basically me and Crosby were hanging out. And we went and saw Graham sing with the Hollies, and then Cass comes up and whispers to me, "Do you think you guys need a harmony singer?"
Cass Elliot of the Mamas and the Papas introduced David and Stephen to the English pop star Graham Nash. Graham had been a member of the Hollies since the early 60s. But by 1968, he was beginning to feel the limitations the group was putting on him.
When I made the decision to leave the Hollies, 3 things had happened.
Shout out Mama Cass, you know, RP Mama Cass, you know, funny enough, I feel like I do recall reading up a bit of, you know, I don't know. There's no real connection, I guess, to these two bands. You know, the Mamas and the Papas, aside from, I guess, a relationship behind the scenes they had, to where Mama Cass was able to make that connection. But with point being said, you know, it's just oddly enough, a lot of how a lot of these artists and bands were in cahoots back in the day, had relationships. But I've done several reactions to the Mamas and the Papas, you know, Mama Cass Elliot reactions as well. So, you know,
One, I was getting frustrated that I was writing songs that I thought were pretty cool and that they didn't want to record. Secondly, they wanted to do an entire album of Bob Dylan songs in a kind of Las Vegas horn section, swing band kind of thing.
All right, what's the
and
problem?
the third thing is that I'd actually been befriended by this teddy bear called David Crosby. Cass Elliot said, "Get in the car, I want you to meet somebody."
She brought him over and told me to get him stoned.
On his chest was a lid from a shoebox, and in the lid was a pile of dope.
I had this pullover pot, meaning if you smoked some and you were going someplace, you would pull over and try to remember where you were going. It was stoner weed. So we laughed all through the afternoon, and I liked him a lot.
In the summer of 1968, Crosby, Stills, and Nash sang together for the first time at a house in Laurel Canyon, belonging to either Cass Elliot or Joni Mitchell.
Nobody is absolutely sure. Now, this is possibly because we might have smoked one, but none of us is absolutely sure whether.
What a way to build a bond, right? Create chemistry, create a relationship. Let's roll some joints, and, you know, let's light it up. You see how the best of friends become, or the worst of enemies could possibly become the best of friends.
It was Joni's or Cass's. I say it was Joni's.
See, David got it wrong. It was at Cass's house where we sang together.
In the Morning When You Rise, we had, I had a pretty good harmony too, and we sang it to Graham. And he went, "Do that again, would you?"
In the morning.
And the third time, he put the top part on. And Steve and I looked at each other and went.
Before Crosby, Stills, and Nash could make their group official, Graham had to go back to England to quit the Hollies. David and Stephen joined him in London.
We go to Britain to rehearse, and there were like fans that would spot us in a car and holler things at us because we were blowing up one of their groups, Oh, those horrible Americans. They didn't know that it was that big a deal. Just a band.
The trio rehearsed their songs and started looking for label interest.
We did attempt at one point to get on Apple Records. It was an up-and-coming new record label, obviously controlled by the Beatles and Peter Asher at the time. We actually auditioned for George and Pete.
So correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Bob Dylan was the first artist signed to Apple. And we're talking about, Apple Records, the label the Beatles came out with or owned. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob Dylan was the first artist to sign to them. Or I know he was on their roster at least. Even if he wasn't the first, I'm pretty positive he was on their roster. Now I think about it. I think they had a female signee who was actually the first signee to Apple. What was her name again? Mary something? I don't know. Let me know in the comment section.
Peter.
Blackbird fly.
And we sang it very well. And they passed. Which I think they probably, in hindsight, were not happy about.
Ahmet Ertegun of Atlantic Records had loved Buffalo Springfield and offered the new group a contract. Crosby, Stills, and Nash settled in Los Angeles to record their first album.
We knew that we were doing something really unusual. We knew the songs were really good. And we were totally thrilled, man. It was the year of the guitar player, you gotta understand. This was a year when Clapton and Hendrix and Jimmy Page and people like that were it, and for us to come out from left field with this, three-part harmony and a lot of acoustic stuff, it's a pretty unexpected thing. It was great.
Almost cut my hair.
The music was wonderful, but the dynamic between the three strong personalities was explosive.
And you walked out 2 days in a row, you hypocrite.
I have my own weirdnesses and crazinesses, but it's not as volatile as David and Stephen's. So we settled into that role, David and Stephen over the years have loved each other to death.
We disagree about a lot of stuff, but we're brothers. I love him. He loves me. And brothers fight.
In May of 1969, the band released their debut. Sweet Judy Blue Eyes and Marrakesh Express were AM hits. FM radio played the entire album. The music of Crosby, Stills, and Nash became the sound of the counter.
That's heat. When no skips, I gotta play it from top to bottom. Thank you.
Culture. Within a few months, David, Stephen, and Graham would be more famous than they had ever been with their previous bands. They had never performed live when an offer came in to appear at a summer music festival in upstate New York. Crosby, Stills, and Nash said yes. Their performance at Woodstock would change everything.
They call him Dr. Hard because he helped me get some seriously hard results down there. He discovered.
In the summer of 1969, Crosby, Stills, and Nash released their first album to immense critical and commercial acclaim. Then it was time for the group to tour. Stills had overdubbed lead guitar, keyboards, and bass on the album. They would need other musicians to perform the songs on stage. It was Atlantic Records president Ahmet Ertegun who suggested Stephen's former bandmate Neil Young would be the perfect addition.
I'd been casting about for a keyboard player. I wanted another musician to play off of. But I'm talking it over with Ahmet one day. And Ahmet says, "Why don't you get Neil?" And didn't we just go through this?
Stephen decided that Ahmet was right. David and Graham were not so sure.
we had an interview with Neil in Greenwich Village on Bleecker Street. And I went to breakfast with Neil because I was the one that was mainly against it, because I didn't see what we needed from Neil. You know, the blend that we had with our voices was pretty good, and our musicianship was pretty good. And by the time I'd finished breakfast with Neil, I would have given him the world. He was unbelievably brilliant, and of course I loved his music.
Songs, how are you not going to invite him in? You know, listen to the songs, man. Good Lord. I'd ask him to join the group if I had 25 people in it.
Neil had begun to establish himself as a solo artist, but the chance to team up with his old Buffalo Springfield partner was...
See, I had no prior knowledge of Neil, you know, especially during the band time. A lot of this content I've reacted to is Neil's solo stuff, right? And he's got great music as a solo artist, but this is news to me.
Too tempting to resist.
Oh, I thought it'd be cool to play with Steven again, and the other guys were great singers and had their own songs and everything. But I really felt like I had some unfinished stuff with Steven that we play together, and we needed to do more of that.
The band officially changed its name to Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young and went to perform their first gig in Chicago. 1 week later, they had their second performance at Woodstock.
Looking at the world through the sunset in your eyes, traveling the train through clear Moroccan skies, ducks and pigs and chickens call.
This gig had come up and it was a kind of a shaky deal. Nobody was sure what was...
So what's the sound? This is classified as folk, right? That's what they would call this, right? Or what style, sonically, would this be placed in?
Going to happen. We just knew that some of our favorite bands were going to play there.
But you know we're riding on the Marrakesh Express.
The big nervousness that everybody, makes a point of, when Steven said.
Tell them who we are. They don't know. You just say hello. Yes.
The point was that all the people that we really cared about were all standing right behind us. And
I'm not sure what's going on with the audio here, y'all. I guess this version that I got is some type of sort of altered version.
Used to be filmed.
I apologize, y'all. It looks like a lot of this audio is
used to be filmed.
Not sure if it's for copyright purposes, but hopefully this doesn't continue throughout the rest of the documentary.
I was offended by the cameras all over the place because it was a distraction to what we were doing, which was playing the music. So I told them not to do that with me, that not to film me, don't bother, don't come near me, and stay out of the way.
Yeah, leave me alone.
After Woodstock, the band's reputation grew with every show they performed.
No privacy, no respect for the sanctuary, the dressing room. Look at them.
No, you got to run. No, you got to hide.
Within a month after their first gig, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young were superstars. Their performance in New York's Fillmore East created such pandemonium the crowds refused to leave the venue. Concert promoter Bill Graham began stuffing money underneath the dressing room doors until the band returned to the stage.
Tom Jones collaboration on the Tom Jones show? Now that's gotta be big. That's big.
In September, the group went to San Francisco to record an album, but the mood had changed.
24 years ago, I come into this life, the son of a woman and a man who lived in strife. He was tired of being poor.
David suffered a huge loss when his girlfriend Christine Hinton was killed in a car accident.
When I made Deja Vu, I was very sad. My girlfriend had just been killed, and a lot of the time I would come into the studio and just sit on the floor and cry. I wasn't very together. I'm amazed that we did as good a work as we did.
The band managed to finish their album, but it was a tough time to begin the longest tour any of them had ever been on.
Don't tell me it's 2.5 years, bruh. Because I had just found out the other day, Guns N' Roses went on the longest tour ever recorded in music history. 2.5 years? What? Huh?
Must have a code that you can live by.
Deja Vu was released in March of 1970 at the same time the Beatles broke up. CSNY were rock's new superstars. Their singles Woodstock, Our House, and Teach Your Children were all over radio. They were the symbol of peace and love, except between themselves.
Well, you know, there was one time in Denver where we had some trouble about rehearsals or something, and they had booked the tour, and once again that never really works for us because the first day we were rehearsing with the new bass player. Once we got to know the guy and started playing with him, it was great. So there was a big fight around then.
We used to fight a lot, sort of like a hockey team, you know? The puck's flying around, and Neil tells this great metaphor about playing hockey. And the team's really clicking and everything, and then all of a sudden the gloves are up and they're all fighting, and then they pick them back up and they go back to playing hockey again. It's kind of like that.
In May of 1970, the band recorded what would become their most profound political statement, a reaction to the shooting of 4 Kent State college students at an anti-war rally.
Crazy how much like music tied into politics, you know, very heavily during this point in time, man. A lot of change, a lot of injustice was going on in that time, and then you saw a lot of, you know, tension in terms of, you know, societal tension, you know, politics, like I just mentioned, you know, different types of rights, etc., types things like these of that nature. But you can see and feel and sense how heavily the music tapped into, you know, people's everyday lives. You know, a lot of the artists and musicians stood up for a lot of the, injustices going on at the time. And it's powerful. You don't really see that nowadays, though. I mean, kind of, but not really at all. Not even close.
I was at this house in a canyon on the California coast. Crosby came up and he had the magazine, the Kent State Killings cover on it. And I'd heard it on the news, but Crosby always has a way of bringing things into focus. That's what woke me up to, that there was something going on there that I had some thoughts about.
We started writing a song. And when it was done, I called Nash, I think, and said, get the studio, get any studio, get it now. We're on our way. And we cut it, and it was out in a week.
Very chanty.
Ohio ratified CSNY's position as the voice of the counterculture. Deja Vu was selling in the millions. Their concerts were rallies, rock shows, political events. But Neil was gearing up to restart his solo career with his new album, After the Gold Rush. In July, the CSNY tour ended, and so did the band. They were living legends. They had been together 1 year. At the end of 1970, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young had become the biggest band in America. Then at the peak of their fame, they walked away.
We got together at a certain point in time, and it had a huge effect on a lot of people, including ourselves. And then, but we always planned from the beginning to go off in different directions and do different things, and it just was a loose organization.
Stream 85 plus channels and save up to $500 a year with YouTube TV. Try it free.
If you want to eat healthy and feel your best, you've got to try Kachava. Kachava is the...
By the time the live album Four-Way Street was released, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young were all making solo records.
When we started, we used our own names because we intended to continue with solo careers. All of us. And every time we did it, they'd say, "Oh, they broke up." We were never together.
I thought that was kind of cool.
He said they were never together. So that was the plan the whole time, just to kind of sustain in a group environment, to just keep progressing. What's the point of recruiting Neil if y'all were never together? You know what I mean? Like, I don't really understand the ploy there, but I mean, y'all reached y'all's highest point of success only to break up. I would have kind of milked it a little bit. Like, come on.
To give ourselves, some air, and that's why we used all of our last names. If there was any plan at all, that was the only one.
In the aftermath of CSNY, all four had hit solo albums.
Whoa. So they all had a hit solo. Interesting.
The one you love, honey, love the one you win. Love the one you win. We can change the world. We can change the world. Everybody saying it's love. Everybody saying it's love. It's love. Look at Mother Nature on the run in the 1970s.
While Stills and Young were leading their own bands, Crosby and Nash began making music together as a duo.
David and I knew that we had a musical link, and we always have and always will have.
There's probably nobody currently that sings harmony the way Nash and I do, or can.
Found that pocket.
It was easy to make music with David because we think so similarly. It was a joy. We had great songs, starting with the first Graham Nash David Crosby record.
Young's solo music propelled him to the top of the charts. In time, his association with Crosby, Stills, and Nash began to seem like a brief side trip in what was always essentially a solo career.
All the people that I play with, they all know me, that I'm moving along and that I may not stay forever and that I might be back. And, as long as everybody knows that from the beginning, it's great to see everybody, and a change is good for music. So real musicians understand that, and they don't...
Neil Young was the lone wolf, in my opinion. Homie was like, I'm always going to be in my own pocket, in my own bag. I'll dip and dabble and, play with you guys. It's all love, no love lost. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I need to go in my own creative mind and get into that bag. I like that. That's me, I like to get away and just kind of focus and hone in on me. Like, not everybody can be a part of that group or, band type of dynamic or setting. So
I worry whether you're playing with them this year or not.
I wanna live, I wanna give. I've been a miner for a heart of gold.
The only one of us who's gone off on his own and been really successful is Neil. And he's done that brilliantly.
In 1973, Neil was on the road when he called on David and Graham to join him. After the tour, the trio contacted Stephen, and they all ended up in Hawaii. They began recording new songs, going so far as to shoot an album cover photo. But the reunion was not to be.
When people plan things for us to do, thinking that, oh, what a great opportunity, sometimes it didn't work out, because we weren't looking at life that way at that time.
Wind blowing through my sails.
The relationship between Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Neil is very much like a frozen pond. The ice gets a certain thickness, and if you wait long enough, it will bear your weight. But if you put too much weight on it, you'll go through.
The four musicians scrapped the album, but agreed to tour. The demand for tickets was enormous. For the first time ever, a rock group would do an entire tour of football stadiums.
So we change partners. Time to change partners.
The tour was a huge success. When it was over, the group convened in Los Angeles to make an album. Shortly after the recording began, Neil disappeared.
We started it, we cut 2 tunes. Neil said he'd show up the next day. Never saw him again.
Everybody has to feel it at the same time for it to really be what it is. I mean, I think it's really great that people have wanted CSNY to be together over the years, and I think that's a testimony to that it was worth it when we did get together.
It's crazy because I mean that's the artistic nature or the sense. Like real artists know not to push creativity, man. If he wasn't feeling it, you can't force it. That's the thing. You just gotta let it. It's gotta become organically.
But you have to want to.
After those sessions fell apart, the band members went their separate ways.
Move along quick, it furthers one to have somewhere to go. Prejudice is slick when it's a word game, festers and grows.
A year later, Stephen was on tour with his own band when Neil showed up. After years as being part of Buffalo Springfield and CSNY, Stephen and Neil began recording as Stills and Young.
We make lots of room for each other and we listen to each other, and there's little spheres of influences, you know, and Neil and I have a way of saying things in 3 sentences that it might take him and David all day to get to.
Stephen and Neil have a special chemistry the same way that Nash and I do.
And I love you.
Stephen's always wanted to work with Neil, and I think he always will. And I think that goes both ways.
After recording a few songs, Stills and Young invited Crosby and Nash down to Miami to join the sessions. Once again, talk of a CSNY album and tour began. But David and Graham had signed a deal with ABC Records and had to finish an album for them first. They left Miami to finish the Crosby-Nash album, Wind on the Water, and in their absence, Neil and Stephen erased their vocals from the recorded tracks. David and Graham were hurt and angry. Neil and Stephen released Long May You Run by the Stills Young Band and went out on the road.
We've been through some things together.
It was a great record, and then the tour got going along pretty good, and we were moving so fast though there was no time to rehearse up anything new, so the set never changed.
After a few weeks, Neil quit the tour. He left Stephen a telegram that said, "Funny how some things that start spontaneously end that way. Eat a peach, Neil."
Neil's sense of humor, it certainly wasn't, I certainly knew him too well to let him hurt my feelings like that with a little bit of verbal jousting.
I left the tour in the middle of the tour, and
damn it, Neil!
Something was wrong. Something was wrong with the whole thing, and it wasn't working. The balance was off in some way, so I bailed on it.
Neil got frustrated, and then he got sick, and he said, "Well, that's it. I'm off." And he's he's got more nerve than I do. I can't just bolt like that.
Stephen was left shaken. Not only had Neil left him holding the bag on the rest of the Stills Young dates, but he had done what had seemed like irreparable damage to his relationship with David and Graham. Stephen showed up at a Crosby-Nash concert and managed to patch things up with David and Graham. Crosby, Stills, and Nash decided to pick up where they left off after their first album in 1969, as a trio. In 1976, they made CSN.
She has seen me changing.
It was a big hit. Neil Young was back to being a solo artist. Crosby, Stills, and Nash were back to being a group.
It was a pretty good time. I remember recording the CSN record in Criteria Studios in Miami. We'd rented this villa. We had great songs. We were having a great time.
Just a song before I go to concern.
What's this song? What's this song, man? Put it in the comment section below if you know.
It's easy to get burned.
Great! It seemed like they had a lot of pockets. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Just a Song Before I Go was CSN's biggest hit ever. The band was back on top and exhilarated to be there. But David's drug use was escalating to dangerous levels.
I was just shifting in the bad habit from snorting cocaine to freebasing cocaine, which is even worse. And I was in a very good place with my music. Crosby, Stills, Nash was doing the CSN album.
But by the end of the 70s, Graham had had enough.
We were at a Crosby Nash recording session. The band started a jam. David was free smoking bass. And his pipe was on an amp. And the jam session was so vibrant and so hot that the amp was shaking, and it was slowly shaking the pipe towards the edge of the amp. Then the pipe fell off and shattered onto the ground, and David stopped the music.
Dope had gotten more important to me than music, something which I swore would never happen in my life.
And at that moment, I knew that David was in deep trouble, and that if David was in deep trouble, we were all in deep trouble. When he stopped that jam from going forward, a door shut in my mind. That was the time I told David that I couldn't make music with him anymore.
Graham Nash was David Crosby's most loyal friend and defender. If David was so far gone that even Graham gave up on him, it looked to everyone like Crosby, Stills, and Nash were gone for good.
Smoking that dope.
In 1981, Crosby, Stills, and Nash were divided again, this time because of David Crosby's drug addiction. Stephen Stills and Graham Nash decided to record a duo album.
Hey, what's up with all the sound going away, man? What they do to the audio on this thing?
Graham and I we're just gonna make a Stills Nash record. It's the only combination we haven't done.
Can't blame him, man. That was right near the end of my drug use days, and I was about as dysfunctional as a human being could be and not be dead.
We handed it into Atlantic Records, and they said, no, we want a CSN record. He said, there is no Crosby, he's gone. He said, well, we don't want the record. So now we're $600,000 into the record out of our own money, right? And I talked with Stephen, I said, what should we do?
And then we had to make room for Dave, and he changed some things that I really wish he hadn't, and then there were some other things that were great additions. It came out much better than it should have.
Crosby was in bad shape, but with his friends' help, he made it through the sessions. The finished album included a song by Graham that documented how he felt about the whole saga of Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young.
Wasted on the Way, I wrote as a reaction to the amount of time that me and David and Stephen and Neil have wasted over the years. We have made a lot of good music, I'm not denying that, but we have wasted a lot of time. We have wasted a lot of love, and we have wasted a lot of life.
So much water moving underneath the bridge. Let the water come and carry us away.
The fact that I turned it into a hit record is almost silly, considering what it's really about.
Between 1982 and 1985, David was arrested 5 times on various drug and weapons-related charges, but his habit persisted. The trio toured on and off, whenever David was well enough.
He always tried to be there 100%, and he didn't always make it, but I do believe that the compensation factor of me and Stephen wanting to be stronger and better because our partner was hurting equaled everything out to me.
In 1985, Crosby, Stills, and Nash had a bittersweet reunion with Neil Young at Live Aid.
Find the cost of freedom buried in the ground.
There are a lot of times that I would rather not remember. That one wasn't the worst of them. There were other times that were much worse. But, there were a lot of times when I did not do anywhere near what I'm capable of doing.
Young tried to help Crosby as others had. It was no use.
He came up to my house in Mill Valley and said, listen, man, I know you're kind of scared to go to the hospital and all that, but why don't you just come down to my place? You can kick all this stuff there. And he took the time out to try and help save my life. You know, we all care about each other a lot.
Neil offered to do another CSNY album if David managed to clean up. Instead, David went on the run from the police, ending up on his boat in Florida.
When he was on the boat, contemplating escaping, and therefore never coming back into American society and being a fugitive at large, a federal fugitive, running out of food, running out of money, the decision that he made to walk off his boat into the nearest FBI office was the point at which David recognized that he desperately needed help.
In December of 1985, David turned himself in and was extradited to a Texas prison.
I prayed for him as much as I do. He got through it, and then, well, facing the inevitable, and then he got through it.
I don't want to be the recovery poster boy. I'm not. I'm one of the lucky few that, you know, was given a chance to get away from it and did. And it took a year in prison and a hell of a lot of meetings and a lot of help from my friends.
In 1986, David emerged from prison clean and sober. Neil kept his word and the quartet regrouped to record American Dream. As a gesture of friendship, it was wonderful. But musically, it was not the triumphant reunion fans had waited 16 years to hear.
American Dream, American Dream. It was part of a bargain.
What's the issue?
That we would get together if David got straightened out.
I don't remember a bit of it, and I'd really rather not discuss it.
We really didn't get together. We were just in the same area.
It didn't work for some more reasons than I can count. Valiant effort, but it didn't work.
CSNY did not tour in support of American Dream. Young went back to his solo career, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash returned to the road.
Chipping away, little by little, day by day.
Then in 1994, David was dealt another terrible blow.
I was very sick and I didn't know it. I was dying and I didn't know it. My liver was probably half gone. And we had no idea why I kept wanting to lie down and rest.
Crosby finally went to the hospital and was told his liver was failing and that he was probably going to die. He'd need all the luck in the world just to survive. For Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young to ever make music again, it would take a miracle.
They call him Dr. Hard because he helped me get some seriously hard results down there. He discovered a secret that takes...
In 1994, the future of Crosby, Stills, and Nash was in doubt, as David Crosby's health was in serious decline.
And I went to UCLA. They sat me down and he said, David, what the deal is you have hepatitis C, and your liver is just about destroyed, and you're going to die unless you get a transplant fairly soon. And he put me on the list, and we started to wait.
David's friends stuck with him through his ordeal, with Graham Nash keeping vigil at his bedside.
The head of medicine there at UCLA called me one day and said, we found a liver for David. Do you want to, we're going to prep him. Do you want to come? I wish him the best, and I go to the door and I turn around and I says, now look, don't you leave me with Stills. And he burst out laughing and I burst out laughing.
Crosby's will to live prevailed again. He made it through the operation, got a new liver, and regained his health.
The puzzling part isn't my descent and rise. The puzzling part is the amazing good luck that has happened and continues to happen in my life. I am an incredibly fortunate man.
When David was well enough, Crosby, Stills, and Nash returned to the road. In 1997, they were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You blessed, my boy. You are blessed.
Then they were dropped by Atlantic Records.
When we signed with Atlantic Records in 1969, we signed for 6 records, and I think we've only just done 6 records, and it's 30 years later. The last couple of records that Atlantic put out of ours, I didn't think that they cared about at all. And so we wanted a clean break, and we wanted a fresh start.
I don't think it's fair to blame just that one record company. They all went through the same metamorphosis. These guys are lawyers and accountants. They haven't got a clue about music.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash decided that they wanted to make new music with or without a new record deal. In 1998, they put up their own money and began recording. Then Stills got a call from Neil Young, who was working on a Buffalo Springfield box set. The two old friends got together at Neil's ranch to listen to the tapes of their first band.
Basically, we were reliving our childhood, and I played him this new song that I was working on and asked him if he would come down and help David and Graham and I, cut that.
I thought that was a cool idea, so a few weeks later I went down there, and I actually didn't even call him. I just waited till I was well on my way down there and then called him from a roadhouse.
Young began recording with Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and soon they had more than an album's worth of material.
I go, Neil, this is not you guesting on a CSN record anymore. What are we doing? He said, well, looks like we're heading into a CSNY record, doesn't it?
Looking forward, all that I can see is good things happening to you and to me.
The third studio album by Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young was released in the fall of 1999. The group had made one album in the 70s, one in the 80s, and one at the end of the 90s. They called it Looking Forward.
It speaks to everything that I'm feeling. I want to look forward. I've done enough explaining what we did wrong in our middle years. And I'm looking forward to how much fun we're going to have rediscovering the joy of being together.
CSNY agreed to tour for the first time in 25 years, but the dates were put on hold when Graham Nash broke both of his legs in a freak boating accident.
I must tell you that as a musician, this was one of the strangest sounds I ever heard when I broke my legs. And I thought, I've really hurt myself here. I did not think about the tour. I didn't think about anything.
Graham had been sailing with his family when a storm came up. He was thrown in the air by the waves. When he landed back in the boat, he shattered his legs.
It was a 2-hour journey back after the accident on the boat to port. And the way that I dealt with it was I chose to ignore everything below my waist. I went in my mind to a great sunset and my land in Hawaii with its waterfalls and the beauty of it. And the 2 hours passed very quickly.
Nash's recovery was difficult, but his spirit was strong and carried him through. The year 2000 brought another medical surprise from David Crosby, but this time it was a happy one. The man who came back from near death by drugs in the 80s and liver disease in the 90s was revealed to be the secret birth father of the children of singer Melissa Etheridge and her partner Julie Cypher. Crosby told an amazed world, "Fatherhood is the wildest ride I've ever been on," and that's saying something. Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young had beaten the odds so many times it would be hard to ever count them out again. In spite of all their battles, all their talent, and all the temptations that came with success, in the long run, the music they made and the love between them was always strong enough to bring them back together.
We are more compassionate with each other. We're more understanding of our own weaknesses and strengths. We are more sensitive.
Nash is a gentleman. And I would have always put him at the center of the group. I think he's the central guy.
Graham, he's really great in the studio, and he works really hard to keep things going, keep things organized.
Stephen, explosive, brilliant, passionate guitar player, musician, singer, writer.
How can you compete with Stephen Stills? He's a great musician. You can't compete. You can't compete with Neil.
Neil's a brilliant, deep guy. Huge creative.
I like that. I like that. They're giving each one, their flowers, so to speak. I like that, man. Appreciate the ones while you still got them around.
And he changes the chemistry. Me, I'm kind of a lunatic. I can't categorize myself very well.
David is more the soul of the catalyst in the spiritual level of things, in some ways, to me. And then Stephen is just my bro. And I love to play guitar with him.
Between the three of them, they're just never going to let me down. We're just different. And we make lots of room for each other, and we listen to each other really assiduously, like we did when we first started when we were kids.
I must tell you that the feeling between the four of us has never been better.
In the morning, when you rise.
There you have it right there, man. That's Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, VH1 Legends documentary. I like these documentaries, man. They they kind of give a thorough but quick type of essence to the story and background and detail. So if you have additional information, put it down in the comment section below. Any comments regarding the documentary, let us know down in the comment section down below. Any other recommendations, put them in the comment section. Check out my other VH1 documentary. Excuse me, reactions, man. I did Journey originally behind the music, and then I actually did Guns N' Roses behind the music. So put additional recommendations down in the comment section below. Peace, love, prosperity. Till next time, we'll catch you guys, man. We out.